Hey everyone, and welcome back to Gambling Flow. I'm Russell Kane.
And I'm Fiona Blake.
Now, Fiona, today we are taking a deep dive into a question that's been sparking some debate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Among poker players,
Yeah.
can you actually count cards in poker?
Hmm.
I mean, we all know about card counting in blackjack.
Right.
You know those stories of those MIT students?
Oh, yeah. Taking Vegas casinos for millions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in poker, is that even possible?
It is, and that's what makes it so interesting.
Right.
You see, most people think of card counting as this, super secret mythical technique
Right.
used exclusively by blackjack pros. But
Yeah.
the truth is, card counting principles can absolutely be applied to poker,
Okay.
even if it's not as straightforward as it is in blackjack.
Okay, so before we get into the how-to, let's level set for our listeners
Okay.
who might be new to this whole concept.
All right.
Can you break down the basic idea of card counting?
Absolutely. So at its core, card counting is simply a way of keeping track of the cards that have been dealt to gain an advantage.
Okay.
So in blackjack, it's used to estimate the likelihood of getting a favorable card next,
Okay.
like a 10 or an ace.
Okay.
By knowing what cards are left in the deck,
Great.
you can adjust your bets
Right.
and your playing strategy accordingly.
So that's why it was so effective for the MIT students.
Exactly.
They were essentially tilting the odds
Yes.
in their favor by knowing when the deck was hot for the player.
Exactly. They exploited the fact that blackjack uses multiple decks and doesn't shuffle after every hand.
Right.
This allowed them to keep a running count of the high and low cards, giving them a significant edge over the casino.
So how does this translate to poker,
Right.
where the deck is shuffled after every hand?
Right.
It seemed like that would make card counting a lot more challenging,
It does.
if not impossible.
It does make traditional card counting like the kind used in blackjack
Okay.
much less powerful.
Right.
However, it doesn't mean that tracking the cards is completely useless in poker. It just requires a different approach,
Okay.
a more nuanced understanding of how information flows in the game.
All right, so walk us through it. How can we actually count cards in poker,
Okay.
given that most of the cards are hidden?
Well, the key is to focus on the information that is available to us, even if it's not as obvious as it is in blackjack.
Okay.
For example, in certain poker variations, like 7-card stud, we actually see quite a few cards face up
Yeah, that's right, in 7-card stud.
throughout the hand.
Players get dealt a combination of face-up and face-down cards.
Yes,
So it's a bit of a hybrid
Yeah.
between poker and blackjack
exactly.
in terms of information.
And this is where card counting becomes super relevant.
Okay.
By remembering the cards that have been folded, especially those high cards like
Right.
10s, jacks, queens, and kings, you can deduce valuable insights about the remaining deck
Right.
and the potential strength of your opponent's hand.
So if I see a couple of queens and an ace get mucked early on,
Yeah.
I can start to make some educated guesses
Yeah.
about whether my opponent might be holding a strong hand or bluffing.
Precisely, you can estimate the probability of those cards appearing again
Okay.
and adjust your strategy accordingly.
Okay.
Let's say you're chasing a straight and 2 of the cards you need
Okay.
have already been folded, knowing that decreases the likelihood of completing your straight.
Right.
And you might want to rethink your bets.
So it sounds like card counting in 7-card stud is more than just helpful.
Yeah,
It's practically mandatory for skilled play.
absolutely. In this game, keeping track of the exposed cards is fundamental.
Okay.
To making good decisions, it gives you a significant edge, especially against players who are not paying attention
Right.
or who aren't as experienced in calculating those probabilities.
So we've established that card counting is essential in 7-card stud.
Yes.
But what about the more popular poker variants like Texas Hold'em and Omaha,
Right.
where we have fewer face-up cards
Right.
to work with? Does card counting play a role in those games as well?
It does, although it's a bit more subtle.
Okay.
In Hold'em and Omaha, we rely more on the concept of blockers when it comes to utilizing card counting principles.
Blockers sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
Break it down for us.
So imagine you're playing Texas Hold'em
Okay.
and you're dealt 2 kings as your whole cards.
Okay.
Those kings now act as blockers, meaning your opponents are less likely to have certain hands.
Okay.
For example, they can't have pocket kings themselves.
Right.
And it also reduces the likelihood of them having a king high straight.
Ah. So even though I can't see their cards,
Yeah.
knowing what I have in my hand can help me
Yes.
rule out certain possibilities and make more informed decisions.
Exactly. It's about using deduction and probability to narrow down the range of hands your opponents might be holding.
And this blocker concept applies to Omaha too, right?
Absolutely.
Especially since players in Omaha are dealt 4 whole cards,
Yes.
which gives them even more opportunities to block potential flushes or straights.
Absolutely. Omaha is a game of complex hand possibilities,
Right.
and understanding blockers becomes even more crucial.
All right.
Holding certain cards can significantly alter the landscape of the game,
Right.
and savvy players use this knowledge to their advantage
Right.
when betting and bluffing.
So even in games with fewer face-up cards like Hold'em and Omaha, card counting can still give us an edge by improving our understanding
Yeah.
of the probabilities and by helping us read our opponents.
Precisely. It's not about predicting the future.
Right.
It's about making better informed decisions based on the available information
Right.
and the dynamics of the game.
Okay.
And that's where card counting can truly shine.
This is all starting to make sense.
Good.
But I have to admit, sometimes I find myself getting caught up in the excitement of the game,
Right.
and I forget to pay attention to the cards that are being folded.
Yeah.
Any tips for staying focused and disciplined when it comes to card counting?
That's a great question and a common challenge. Even for experienced players, it takes practice and concentration, but there are a few things you can do to improve your card memory.
Like taking a mental snapshot
Yes.
of the table before making any significant decision.
Exactly.
Kind of like a quick recap of the cards that have been exposed.
It's like pausing the game for a split second to process the information
Okay.
and update your mental picture of the deck. Another helpful technique is to focus on those key cards
Okay.
that have a higher impact on the overall game, like the high cards we discussed earlier.
So instead of trying to remember every single card,
Yes,
prioritize those that are more likely to make or break a hand.
exactly. It's about being selective with your focus and not overwhelming your brain
Right.
with unnecessary details.
This is all incredibly helpful, Fiona.
Okay,
You've definitely shed some light on the often misunderstood world
great.
of card counting in poker. But before we move on, I wanted to address something you mentioned earlier
Okay.
about card counting not being a guaranteed path to winning.
Right. It's important to remember that card counting,
Right.
even when done effectively, is just one tool
Oh,
in a skilled poker player's toolkit.
Right.
It's not some magical cheat code
Right.
that will make you invincible at the tables.
So what are some of the other skills that are essential for success in poker?
Well, understanding basic poker math is crucial.
Okay.
You need to be comfortable calculating pot odds,
Okay.
implied odds, and the probabilities of making different hands.
Okay.
This allows you to make more informed decisions about betting, calling, and folding
Right.
based on the mathematical likelihood of success.
Okay, so knowing the math is key. What else?
Reading your opponents is another vital skill.
Okay.
Paying attention to their betting patterns,
Okay.
body language,
Okay.
and even their table talk
Right.
can provide valuable insights into their hand strength.
Right.
And intentions poker is as much a psychological game as it is a mathematical one.
So it's not just about the cards. It's about understanding the psychology of the game as well.
Exactly. Poker is a game of incomplete information.
Right.
So being able to gather as much information as possible, both from the cards and from your opponents, is what separates the good players from the great players.
All right, Fiona. I have one more question before we wrap up this part of our card counting deep dive.
Yeah.
We've talked about how card counting can help us make better decisions in poker,
Yes.
but can it also help us identify players who might be bluffing?
That's a fantastic question, Russell, and one that deserves its own in-depth discussion.
Sounds intriguing.
We'll delve into the secrets of bluff detection
Okay.
and how card counting can give you an edge
Okay.
in spotting those tricky opponents in the next part of our deep dive.
Can't wait. All right, folks, that wraps up part 1
Okay.
of our exploration into the world of card counting and poker. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yes, we have.
From the basics of how it works
Mm-hmm.
to the specific ways it applies in different games. Join us in part 2, where we'll uncover even more strategies and techniques to help you become a more informed and strategic poker player. See you then.
See you then. Welcome back to Gambling Flow, everyone. We're diving deeper into that fascinating world of card counting in poker.
All right, Fiona, you've convinced us that card counting can be like this valuable weapon, in our poker arsenal.
Right.
Even if it's not going to transform us into those legendary MIT blackjack whizzes,
Right.
overnight.
Yeah.
But let's get practical here.
Okay.
For those of us who don't have, Rain Man-like memory skills,
Yeah.
how do we actually keep track of all these cards flying around the table?
Right.
Do we need to, develop some intricate system with secret codes and hand signals?
Well, it doesn't need to be that complicated. You don't have to become a memory champion to effectively incorporate card counting into your poker strategy. Most experienced players use fairly simple methods to keep a mental tally of the key cards.
So we can ditch the secret decoder ring and the invisible ink.
You can?
That's a relief.
Yeah.
But how do we decide which cards to focus on? Should we be trying to memorize the entire deck, or is there a more targeted approach?
There's definitely a more strategic way to go about it. A common approach, especially for games like 7-Card Stud, where we have more face-up cards, is to concentrate on tracking the high cards. Tens, jacks, queens, kings, and aces.
Okay, so prioritize the power players.
Yes.
The cards that are most likely to, make or break a strong hand.
Exactly.
But why focus specifically on those high cards?
Because those high cards are the building blocks of the most powerful hands in poker. Straights, flushes, full houses, and of course those premium pairs, knowing how many of those cards have already been dealt or folded, gives you a much clearer picture of the potential strength of your opponent's hand.
Makes sense. It's like having a sneak peek into the future of the game. Even though the future can be a fickle mistress.
Right.
In poker. So let's paint a scenario here. Say I'm playing 7-Card Stud. And 3 high cards, a queen, a king, and an ace get folded before I even get my 4th street card. What does that tell me, Fiona?
That's valuable information, Russell. It tells you that the remaining deck is now relatively richer in high cards. This means it's more likely that someone might hit a strong hand later in the hand. And it might make you more cautious about chasing draws or staying in the pot with a marginal hand. You might need to adjust your betting strategy accordingly.
So it's not just about counting the cards. It's about understanding how that information shifts the overall probabilities of the game. Right? It's like those scales of justice, seeing those high cards disappear, tips the scales in favor of the remaining players.
Yes.
Who might be holding those high cards in their hand.
That's a great analogy. Russell card counting is all about gaining an edge. By understanding the shifting dynamics of the game, it's about seeing those subtle patterns that emerge as the cards are revealed and using those patterns
to inform your decisions.
Now let's shift gears to Hold'em and Omaha, where we have fewer face-up cards to work with. How do we apply these card counting principles in those games where information is more concealed?
In Hold'em and Omaha, the concept of blockers becomes even more crucial. Remember, a blocker is a card you hold in your hand that makes it less likely for your opponent to have a certain hand. It's like eliminating pieces from a puzzle. If you have a piece, they can't.
I remember. So if I'm sitting there with a king and a queen in my hand in Texas, Hold'em, it's a pretty safe bet that my opponent isn't holding pocket kings. Or pocket queens.
Exactly. And that knowledge, even if it seems subtle, can be a game changer, especially in those early betting rounds before the flop. It can influence whether you decide to raise, call, or fold based on the perceived strength of your opponent's hand.
That's like having a secret weapon, a little bit of insider information. Yes.
That helps you navigate the game with more confidence. So even though we can't see their cards directly, we can still make educated guesses about their hand strength. Based on what we know about the cards that are not in play.
Absolutely. It's like a detective using clues to solve a mystery. We're gathering evidence piece by piece to create a more complete picture of the situation. And card counting gives us another crucial piece of that puzzle.
Fiona, this is all starting to click.
Good.
But I have to confess something. Sometimes I find myself getting so caught up in the heat of the moment. The banter at the table, the pressure of the bets that I completely forget to pay attention to the cards being folded. It's like my brain goes on autopilot. Focused only on my own hand. Any tips for staying focused and disciplined when it comes to card counting, especially when the game gets intense?
It's a common challenge, Russell. Even seasoned players can get distracted. Poker is a game of focus and concentration, and maintaining that mental discipline can be tough, especially when the stakes are high and the adrenaline is pumping.
So how do we train our brains to stay sharp and avoid those mental lapses, those moments where we completely forget to track the cards.
One simple but effective technique is to make a conscious effort to pause and review the folded cards before making any significant betting decisions.
Okay.
It's like taking a mental snapshot of the table before you commit to a big bet.
So it's like hitting the pause button on the game, taking a quick inventory of the cards that are out of play, and then using that information to guide our next move.
Precisely. It only takes a few seconds, but those few seconds can make a world of difference. In your decision-making process, it helps you stay grounded in the reality of the game rather than getting swept away by emotions or assumptions.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's like a mental checklist.
Right.
Before I bet, I check the cards. Simple but effective.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic here, Fiona. We've talked a lot about the benefits of card counting.
Right.
But it's not some foolproof system that guarantees we'll win every hand right.
You're absolutely right. Russell card counting is a powerful tool, but it's not a magic bullet.
Right.
It's just one piece of the complex puzzle that is poker.
So what are some of the other pieces of that puzzle?
Right.
Those essential skills that every aspiring poker player needs to master, besides card counting, of course.
Well, mastering the fundamentals of poker math is absolutely crucial.
Okay.
You need to understand pot odds, implied odds.
Right.
And the probabilities of making different hands.
Right.
This mathematical foundation allows you to make more calculated decisions, weighing the risks and rewards of each bet based on the odds of success.
Right. Poker isn't just about luck. It's about understanding the math behind the game, knowing when to push your chips in and when to fold. What else, Fiona? What other secrets can you reveal from your years of experience at the poker table?
Another vital skill, and this is something that often gets overlooked, is the ability to read your opponents. Paying attention to their betting patterns, their body language, even their table talk.
Right.
All of these subtle cues can give you valuable insights into their hand strength and their intentions.
So it's not just about the cards, it's about understanding the psychology of the game, right?
Exactly.
It's about getting inside the minds of your opponents, trying to figure out what they're thinking, what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And whether they're holding the nuts or just trying to bluff you out of the pot.
Exactly. Poker is a game of incomplete information.
Right.
And that's what makes it so compelling.
Yeah.
It's a battle of wits.
Yeah.
A constant game of deception and deduction.
Right.
And the ability to read your opponents.
Yeah.
To sense their vulnerabilities and exploit their weaknesses is what separates the good players from the great players.
Fiona, you've given our listeners a lot to think about today, a lot of tools and techniques to add to their poker arsenal.
Yes.
But before we wrap up part 2 of our deep dive into card counting, I have one more question that I know is on everyone's mind. Can card counting help us spot those sneaky bluffers?
Oh, yeah.
Those players who are masters of deception?
The art of bluff detection, Russell. It's one of the most challenging and rewarding aspects of poker.
So spill the beans, Fiona. How can card counting actually help us see through those bluffs? Those well-crafted facades designed to make us fold the winning hand?
That's a great question, Russell, and one that we'll explore in more detail in part 3 of our deep dive.
It sounds like we're ending on a cliffhanger. All right, folks, that wraps up part 2 of our exploration into the world of card counting in poker. We've delved deeper into the strategies and techniques you can use to become a more informed and strategic player. Join us in part 3, where we'll uncover the secrets of bluff detection. And learn how card counting can give you an edge in spotting those tricky opponents. See you there.
See you there.
Welcome back to Gambling Flow, listeners. We're wrapping up our deep dive into the world of card counting and poker, and I, for one, am ready to put all these newfound skills to the test.
And I, Russell, am ready to guide you on this journey of poker enlightenment.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the basics of how card counting works to its applications in different poker variations. But today, Fiona, we're tackling a topic that's close to every poker player's heart. How to sniff out those sneaky bluffers.
The art of bluff detection, Russell.
Exactly.
It's one of the most elusive and exciting aspects of poker. It's where psychology and strategy collide.
It's the ultimate mind game, trying to figure out if your opponent is holding the nuts or just putting on a show. But how can card counting, which is all about tracking the cards that have been dealt, actually help us see through those carefully constructed bluffs?
Remember, Russell, card counting isn't just about memorizing numbers. It's about using that information to understand the probabilities of the game, the likelihood of certain hands being held, and the potential for deception.
Okay, I'm following you. So, by knowing which cards are out of play, we can start to narrow down the range of hands our opponent might be holding,
Yeah,
even if we can't see their whole cards.
precisely. And that's where bluff detection comes in. Let's say you're playing Texas Hold'em,
Okay.
and the board shows 3 hearts. Your opponent, who's been betting aggressively, suddenly pushes all in on the river.
Sounds like a classic Hollywood poker scene. Fiona, the tension is palpable. So how does card counting help me decide whether to call their bluff or fold?
If you've been diligently tracking the cards, you might know that several hearts have already been folded. This makes it less likely that your opponent actually has the flush they're representing.
Ah, so card counting gives me that extra layer of information, that little voice in my head saying, hold on, something doesn't add up here.
Exactly. It allows you to weigh the odds more effectively. Are they truly representing a strong hand, or are they trying to capitalize on the perceived scariness of the board?
So card counting can give me the confidence to call a bluff that I might have otherwise folded to out of fear. It's like having a secret weapon, a poker lie detector.
In a way, yes, but it's important to remember that card counting is just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
You still need to consider your opponent's betting patterns, their table image, any tells they might be giving away all those classic poker reads.
Right. It's about combining those analytical skills with our gut instincts, those intuitive reads that we develop over time.
Exactly. Card counting helps you make more informed decisions, but it doesn't eliminate the element of risk or the need for good judgment.
So it's not a foolproof system, but it gives us a significant advantage in those high-pressure moments when we're trying to decipher a bluff. Fiona, do you have any personal stories about using card counting to spot a bluff? A moment where it really paid off for you?
Well, there was this one hand I played years ago in a tournament. I was holding a decent hand, but my opponent, a notoriously aggressive player, was betting like he had the nuts.
Sounds intense. I can feel the sweat beading on my forehead just imagining it. What happened?
I had been carefully tracking the cards, and I knew it was highly unlikely he actually had the premium hand he was representing.
Okay.
The cards just didn't add up, so I decided to call his bluff.
Talk about a gutsy move, and did you win?
I did. He showed a complete bluff, and I scooped a massive pot. It was one of those moments where card counting truly made the difference, allowing me to see through the deception and make the right call.
That's incredible. It's like those moments in detective movies where the pieces of the puzzle finally fall into place and the truth is revealed.
Exactly. It's a satisfying feeling when you're able to use your knowledge and observation skills to outsmart your opponents.
All right, Fiona, before we wrap up this episode, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the legality and ethics of card counting.
Okay.
We know it's perfectly legal in poker, unlike in blackjack where casinos might try to ban you for being too good.
Right.
But some people might still think it's unethical, a form of cheating.
That's a misconception. Russell, card counting in poker is not cheating.
Okay.
It's simply using your brain to process information that's readily available to everyone at the table.
So it's no different than paying attention to betting patterns or trying to read your opponent's tells. Right? It's all part of the game, part of the mental challenge of poker.
Exactly. It's a skill-based strategy that rewards those who are willing to put in the effort to learn and practice. In fact, many professional poker players consider card counting to be an essential part of their game.
So to all our listeners who are worried about getting into trouble, rest assured, card counting in poker is perfectly legal and ethical. It's just another tool to help you sharpen your game and become a more formidable opponent.
Absolutely. It's about playing smarter, not harder.
Well, folks, there you have it. We've explored the ins and outs of card counting in poker, from the basics to the subtleties of bluff detection. Hopefully, we've debunked some myths and given you the confidence to incorporate this valuable skill into your own game.
Remember, it's not a magic bullet, but with practice and patience, card counting can be a powerful weapon in your poker arsenal.
A huge thank you to the amazing Fiona Blake for joining us on this deep dive into the world of card counting. It's always a pleasure to have you on Gambling Flow.
The pleasure is all mine, Russell.
And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Gambling Flow with me, Russell Kane, and the brilliant Fiona Blake. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode with your fellow poker enthusiasts. Until next time, may the cards be ever in your favor.